Hi, welcome to Hospitality Live with Rupesh. Each week, we feature an industry leader that will share the latest trends and the best strategies to help you grow. Now, welcome your host, Rupesh Patel.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I got it. There you go. I finally got it. Every week it's something different. But guess what? I'm excited about this conversation today. Guys, this is episode number 58. Road to Recovery, How to Inspire, Be a Mentor, Feel Fulfilled as we grow older. And I could feel this right now because I've been going through a lot in my life. And as you know, if you see my post, there's a lot going on in my life. So I'm excited to feel a little sense of calm, think a little bit deeper. And I'm excited about this conversation with iconic hotelier, TED Talk speaker, best-selling author, Chip Conley. And we're gonna learn leadership wisdom to help you and your team grow. You're gonna understand how to stay motivated when you don't want to feel, when you don't feel motivated at all. And just how to make career transitions. Right now, there's a lot of things going on in life. And I feel like there's transitions that are happening that we sometimes have control over. And a lot of times we have control over it. Sometimes we feel like we don't. Well, today's conversation is going to be helpful. We get to speak with Chip Conley and understand how things are going in our brain, because we could be all over the place. Guys, comment and let us know where you're watching from. Yes, again, we are giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to the most engaging person here on the show live today before the show is over. We're picking somebody. So comment and let us know where you're watching from. And I'm just going to give a shout out real quick. Good morning to everybody. Daytona Beach. We have India. Please, South Carolina. Please comment and let us know where you're watching from, because I love seeing where people are listening from and where they're getting inspired, because there's people from like all over the place. Vienna, Fargo, North Dakota. Guys, comment and let us know. The most engaging person here on this show will win that $50 gift card. All right, so this episode is sponsored. Guys, please put this in the comments, somebody. It's spurwork.com/hospitality live. Now, what Spur does, they're an all-in-one HR benefits platform and payroll system that you have no more paperwork. Think about how many times you filled out a new hire packet for that new employee, and now you're faxing, you're printing, you're scanning, you're doing all these crazy things that are driving you crazy and wasting your time. Not with Spur. Now with Spur, you can onboard somebody within like 7 minutes if you're really, really timing it. But within 15 minutes, you can have somebody onboarded without any paperwork. Get rid of all that paperwork. And guys, hit my sponsor up, spurwork.com/hospitality live. They're changing the way HR and your benefits and payroll is processed, and they're the most affordable in the industry, I think. And please hit the spurwork.com website. Somebody comment, put that in the comments, because I want somebody to click on it. There you go, Francis. She put that up. Somebody else put the comment in there, guys. Welcome to Delhi, India, Vietnam, Charlotte. Guys, thank you so much, Darsh, for putting that up. Cleveland, Nashville, Tennessee, Kentucky, Niagara Falls, Pennsylvania, Clearwater, Sarasota, Orlando, Columbus, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Chapel Hill. Good morning, Boston. The Home to Suites. Good morning. Guys, comment, let us know. We're going to continue this conversation. And every week, I bring up a mindset, right? Guys, thank you so much to Spur. Every week, I bring up a mindset. And this week, it's about how you keep yourself going. And let me bring this up real quick and kind of share with you this. Let me see if I have it pulled up. Hang on, let me see. There it is. All right. So let me share this with you. All right. So 3 things that have kept me going. Honestly, they have kept me going when things are rough. And right now, my parents both had COVID. My dad's been in the hospital for 17 days now, in the ICU, on a ventilator, which is super scary. And we've been doing a virtual call. And he's in a coma, so we're just looking at pretty much him in a bed with all these tubes and wires going out. And this Monday, I was like, man, I don't feel like being at work. And I had to take a break. I had to go home. I actually had to go home because I was just feeling bad about myself, and I was just feeling down. And sometimes it's okay to feel that way. But you got to pick yourself back up. And the 3 things that have kept me going these last 6 months, or maybe even a little bit longer than that, is number 1, cooking. Like if you notice, one of my first shows when we had COVID or when we went through the pandemic was how to make waffles in the morning, how to get out of bed, put your shoes on. My shoes are on right now, even though I'm in my home office. And that's something that just kept me going. So cooking is probably one of the most calming things for me. Guys, comment, let me know what makes you feel good and what keeps you going through hard times. Number 2 is music. Before the show, every single day in my house, I have loud music on. And this morning, I was playing Above and Beyond, their 400th group therapy session. And I just love it because I'm a big festival guy. I go to festivals all the time. And, right now we're doing festivals online. And so, I'm into that mindset where music keeps me happy, it keeps me going, and it brings back a lot of memories. So if you could think about like this one song in your life that brought you back to like summer of high school or college, or when you had, wherever, that one experience, and it always brings you back to that memory, which I love that music can do that for you. And even right now, it can bring you in a different state of mind, which I do that every single day when it comes to music. And number 3 is fitness. I got to tell you, I get up at 4:30, 3:30, 4:30 every single morning, and I hit the gym. And it's because I like to eat and I like to cook, but then also it keeps me energized. It keeps me going. And, there's things that you can't control, but you can control how you go to the gym. And you can control your whole mindset when we're talking about what keeps you going. And so, guys, remember, a comment. Let me see what people are saying in the comments. People are saying, yeah, they do yoga, meditation, gardening, taking the dog out to the walk, ocean. I love the ocean. Guys, comment and let us know what else keeps you going when you're kind of just in the state of confusion sometimes in your life. And, often that you just need to keep going. And there's some things and a lot of things. And I posted about this a couple of days ago. This was what keeps us going, right? All right. So now bring on Sarah. Sarah Dandashy is with the Hospitality Minute. What's going on, Sarah?
Good morning. How are you, Rupesh?
I'm doing good. I'm hanging in there. I'm staying positive, and that's all I can do right now because we don't have a lot of control in life besides these few things that we can really have control over. And let's get your post. Let's get your video. But hang on.
Hi, I'm Sarah Dandashy from Ask a Concierge. Every week, I'll be sharing the latest hospitality and travel news and updates in a segment we like to call Hospitality Minute.
All right, Sarah, give us the rundown. What's going on in hospitality? Did you hear last night that Disney gave or is letting go of 28,000 people? And
I did.
My city right here in Orlando, 28,000 people just losing their jobs. I feel bad because I know a lot of those people that are working at the parks here and even hotels that are connected to it. So what's the news? What's the scoop on hospitality right now?
It's crazy that you say that, actually, because obviously here I'm back in Los Angeles. I'm back on the West Coast, and certainly we have Disneyland, and there has been a huge sort of struggle going back and forth because they haven't opened their parks yet, and they're like, hey, we need to get people back out there. So, but we'll dive in and share a couple of other things. In the world of airlines. So America has just announced that they are joining United as well as Hawaiian in offering pre-flight COVID testing. They just announced this on Tuesday. Now, where this kind of started is just last week, United and Hawaiian were kind of stepping up to the plate to offer these sort of like rapid COVID tests, so that specifically for their flights to Hawaii, because that's also been a huge point of contention, is trying to get people back to Hawaii. Now, what is a little bit interesting about this is that American is also offering it to more destinations. So it won't just be for the route to Hawaii, but it will also be for Jamaica and the Bahamas. What I find interesting is way back when I actually had reported that Emirates had done the same thing in about June or July, where they were doing this sort of rapid testing before flights. They ended up stopping it after a month because they found that these rapid tests were not as accurate as they had hoped. So I'm curious to see how this will move forward, but it is also a very good move as far as building consumer confidence. Now, moving on to cruise lines as well. There's a little bit of a battle as far as when cruise ships can go ahead and sail. So the CDC they're basically recommending that there should be a no sail until February of 2021. They put forward that proposal to the White House, and the White House is basically saying, no, we want to go on a month-by-month basis. Right now, there's a no sail until October, and then again, they'll do it by month. So that's also pretty interesting. In the world of hotels, This is huge in Las Vegas. So Cosmopolitan, as well as the Park MGM and Nomad in Las Vegas, have all cracked down on smoking. So basically in this sort of reopening time, they are now making their properties non-smoking. And if you know anything about Las Vegas and casinos, they have always been very, everybody can smoke everywhere. So it'll be interesting to see if other hotels and casinos actually follow suit. But I think a lot of them will actually look towards these hotels to see, okay, how are people responding? And if they're responding negatively, they'll probably continue to allow people to smoke. And then finally, in technology, Wyndham Hotels has launched their mobile app. And what was interesting about this is I'm like, okay, well, we've always seen a lot of hotels that have these mobile apps so you can do these check-ins and check-outs. But what's unique about this is Wyndham is actually the first economy and mid-scale hotel brand to go ahead and offer this app and this mobile check-in and check-out process. So interesting stuff happening in travel and hospitality.
Awesome, Sarah. Listen, I appreciate not smelling like smoke when I get home from wherever I'm going out. And, New York did this long time ago where they banned smoking from any clubs, any restaurants, like anything. And I don't know why Vegas waited this long
It's Sin City. It's Sin City, baby. They've got to
It is. They've already legalized marijuana. And I went, what was it, like a year ago or maybe 6 months ago when I went to Vegas, and people were smoking pot on the streets. And so now, I'm glad that they're doing this, taking a step, because, it affects all of us as far as non-smokers. And, maybe we might stick around longer that we don't smell like smoke all day long, right?
Agree. I mean, being in Southern California, I have to say, whenever I go to a destination where people are smoking, I find it so jarring. I'm like, oh, I forgot what that's like. But we'll see what happens in the future.
Sarah Dandashy, it's always a pleasure. Where can people connect with you?
You guys can find me online. My website is askaconcierge.tv, but you can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Ask a Concierge.
Please follow her on YouTube. She has great videos that she posts almost every single day. And it's amazing that, you have this wealth of knowledge and you're connected to so many people. Guys, follow her on Instagram. She has a check mark on Instagram. Sarah, I'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right, thank you.
I love Sarah. She's awesome. We connected a while back and I was like, man, you'd be perfect for the show because, you bring on like relevant stuff that we all probably don't have time to listen to and get into because we're busy running our hotels. We're busy running our restaurants and, we're busy. So guys, please hit up Sarah. All right. So now on to the conversation that I'm super excited about. And this topic about how to inspire, be a mentor, feel fulfilled, right? We all need that where we're like, oh, I did something, right? You're passionate about something. As we get older, we're not getting younger, right? You see these grays coming in and you're like, man, this guy's getting old and we're all getting old together. So how do you stay focused? How do you stay in that mindset? How do you stay positive? And then how do you feel relevant? My featured guest is Chip Conley. We bring him on right now. Chip, welcome to the show. This guy is a rock star. He's an iconic hotelier, and I want to learn more about you because I know I know about it. I want to make sure that our audience knows about it too. But you're a best-selling author. I've watched all your TED Talks and online speeches and keynotes. You're amazing at what you do, and now you're here to inspire all of us and maybe an older generation or a generation that is transforming their lives right now as we're going through COVID and kind of just understanding where we need to be. Chip, welcome to the show.
Rupesh, I'm honored to be with you. Thank you.
What's going on as far as your background? I know that there's so many things that you've done, and right now you're an advisor for Airbnb, but before that, you built this huge boutique hotel business in the 80s, and you grew it to this number. So tell us about your background. How did you get into the hotel business? Because
Sure.
everyone just usually falls into it, right?
So I'll give you a brief arc of my hospitality career. So I was a real estate developer, went to Stanford undergrad, went to Stanford Business School, then worked as a real estate developer in San Francisco. But I actually found it to be very transactional. And I really loved throwing parties, something I think you like doing, Rupesh. And I really like the idea of making people feel good. And generally real estate developers don't focus on that, but people in the hospitality business do. And it was the mid-1980s. I was 25 years old and I wrote a business plan to create a boutique hotel company because boutique hotels were really just getting off the ground. Ian Schrager and Bill Kimpton had sort of started to popularize the boutique hotel movement. I called it Joie de Vivre, meaning, joy of life in French. And our mission was to create joy. Over the next 24 years, until I was about age 50, we created 52 boutique hotels, all of them in California, 46 of them in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is sort of crazy if you think about that many. We had at one point as many as I think 24 hotels just in San Francisco alone.
Wow.
And then in the Great Recession, I came face to face with the fact that I didn't want to do this anymore. And I sold the company. It's now Joie de Vivre is now part of the Hyatt chain. It's one of their brands. And I wasn't really sure what was next for me. And if you've ever seen the movie The Intern with Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway, famously, De Niro says early in the movie, musicians don't retire. They quit when there's no more music left inside of them. And I knew I still had music inside of me. I just wasn't sure who to share it with. And that's about the time that Brian Chesky, the co-founder and CEO of Airbnb, approached me and he said, I would like to have you be my in-house mentor. I'd like to have you be the head of global hospitality and strategy for the company. And so for the next 4 years, in the early days of Airbnb, I was the mentor, and I still am the mentor to Brian. But for those 4 years, I was in-house 70 hours a week, mentoring Brian while also reporting to him. He's 21 years younger than me, and I had been for 24 years my own the CEO of a company that grew to 3,500 people. But now I'm actually reporting to someone 21 years younger than me. And so I'm going to shut up there, and let's talk a little bit about mentoring, and I'll let you ask a question about it, because my relationship with Brian and my relationship with mentoring overall, I think it's really valuable for people because I have a different read on mentoring than a lot of other people.
Yeah, and right now where the transition's happening in hospitality is a lot of young kids are coming in. A lot of that younger generation is coming in and they're becoming general managers when they're in their 20s. And, we have a GM that's I think she's in her 20s right now. And she's been the GM for a while now. And so how do you, as an older person, how do you say it's okay to have a younger boss and then have somebody that, that can keep you going too, because you think it's the opposite?
Well, so let's start by looking at the fact that 40% of Americans have a boss that's younger than them. If you are 55 years old, there's a 70% chance that you have a boss younger than you. And by the year 2025, the majority of Americans will have a younger boss. So this phenomena of, having the physics of power shift such that a lot of the power is moving to younger people is not just a phenomenon in the tech industry. Frankly, it's in most industries. So what do you do with that? Well, I think that my read on this is the following. My first mentee was a guy named Gavin Newsom. So Gavin is now the governor of California. This is before he was the mayor of San Francisco. He was a hospitality CEO, a startup CEO of a company called Plumpjack. His sister knew that Gavin didn't know what the hell he was doing in this startup. I was 35. I had been running my company for 9 years. He was 28 starting his. And so my first mentor relationship was with him. And what I learned from that is I could learn as much from him as he could from me. And over the course of my life, whether it's Liz Lambert at Bunkhouse Hotels, who I helped get her off the ground, Michael Franti, famous musician, I've been his mentor, Reza Merchant, the CEO of a company called The Collective based in London, that's really moving to become the largest co-living developer and operator in the world, or Brian Chesky. So I think the key thing to learn about mentorship and about relationships with people younger than you is it's all about humility and curiosity. If you think, the whole okay boomer phenomena started because some cranky old white guy was just telling some younger person how the world worked, as if he knew it all. He was just telling his story, truly. We all have a story, but if you think your story is the only way it works, you are not necessarily good material to be a mentor. Because actually a mentor is not someone who just has wisdom and dispenses it. They're actually someone who asks great questions. Frankly, the best mentors are people who are curious about you and what you want to actually do in your life. And they ask you spectacular questions. They don't tell you how the world works. They help you discover your own talents, your own mastery, and the truths that are meaningful to you in terms of how leadership works, for example. So over the course of my 8 years now at Airbnb, 4 years in a full-time role, 4 years as a strategic advisor, I've had over 100 mentees. And I probably would just say in every single case, I learned as much from them as they did from me. So what's an example of that? So with Brian Chesky, who's sort of famous now, I learned a lot about digital intelligence from him, tech tools, design thinking when it comes to creating a website, millennial travel habits, millennial lifestyle perspectives. So all of those things are things I learned from him. And I was supposed to be his mentor. Yes, I taught him about leadership. I taught him about strategy. I taught him about the hospitality business, because when I joined Airbnb, there was not a single person in the company who had ever had any background in travel or hospitality. And here we were disrupting that industry. I taught him about emotional intelligence. So it was a very symbiotic relationship, and the best mentorship relationships are probably full of this sort of reciprocity.
Right. And, and then you have a mentor. Have you had mentors in your life? I know that you've mentored them and then
Yeah.
you've mentored you back, but have you had your own? And I'd be curious that people that are watching and listening, do you guys have a mentor, or are you mentoring somebody else right now, or a bunch of people? I think it's powerful that you can keep at least one person going and then somebody else can keep you going, right?
Let me tell you the story. I love this story. So a couple of years after I started Joie de Vivre, I'm now 28 years old. I can see that there are leaders out there in the world who I really admire, and I want to actually somehow reach them. One of them was Richard Branson, who ultimately wrote the foreword for my first book called The Rebel Rules. So I've written 5 books. But there's this guy named Herb Kelleher, and he was the founding CEO of Southwest Airlines. And I just loved Southwest Airlines' sort of quirky culture, and the fact that here was a low-priced airline that had the best service, best culture, etc. So I called him in Dallas from San Francisco, and I got his assistant, his secretary, his executive assistant, and her name is Colleen Barrett. And I said, well, I want to talk to her because I'd like him to be my mentor. And she laughed, and she said, he's a little busy. I don't think he can do that. But she said the following. She said, if you write him a letter, again, this is 1989, long time ago, no internet. If you write him a letter and ask him a few questions, and maybe you do that once a year, he'll write back. I'm sure he will. And so I wrote him a letter, and 3 weeks later, I got a letter back from Herb Kelleher answering a bunch of my questions about corporate culture. Well, over the course of the next 10 years, once a year, I wrote him. I never met him. I never had a phone call. That woman, Colleen Barrett, who was his secretary, became president of Southwest Airlines. He helped me to see that you can spot talent and mastery in everyone, including your secretary, who goes on to become president of the most successful airline in the United States.
Wow.
And so I learned a lot from him just by watching him from afar. And it's probably some good evidence to say, your mentor may be somebody you may never meet. You may be somebody who you just learn about basically by reading their books, by watching them on YouTube, by reading their blog. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So you don't have to have a mentor that's in your conversation or just in your life as far as just being a friend with them. You can be a mentor. You can have a mentor from afar. Because I've actually had that.
I think both are good. Having personalized, customized conversations with someone, there's nothing better than that, as long as that person is really good at what they're doing in terms of being able to be curious about you and asking great questions. But yeah, why not use someone who's as an inspiration and learn from them? I mean, I've learned a lot from Steve Jobs, both good and bad, in terms of his leadership thinking and his creativity and his way of sort of imagining and mind reading customers and what they're looking for. But I've also learned some terrible things about just how he was not the chief emotions officer of Apple because he didn't have much control over his emotions. So yeah, I think you can learn the good, bad, and the ugly about anybody.
Right. So, all right. So I know that you have transitioned multiple times in your life, right? It wasn't just one time you transitioned. We're all going through that right now. And how do you make that easier when you're getting older? You might not be getting that job because now somebody else younger than you got it, or that they're replacing you with somebody younger. And now you have to make this transition of like, do I retire or do I do something else? Or like,
yeah.
how do you make that transition properly? And what advice do you have to the listeners here?
Yeah. So
Myself, really.
Yeah, you're turning 44 next month. So happy birthday! About a week before I turn 60. So long story short is after my 4 years at Airbnb, one of the things that dawned on me is the following: we're living in a world where often people are living longer, and power seems to be moving younger, and the world is changing faster. So there are a lot of people in midlife who are actually a bit bewildered and feeling irrelevant in a world that isn't like their parents' world. So I decided to write a book called Wisdom at Work: The Making of a Modern Elder. And in that book, I talk a lot about how do you make transitions? How do you pivot your career? Or how do you change where you live, or even maybe the relationship you're in? So I wrote that, and while I was writing it in Baja, in southern Baja, about 1 hour north of Cabo San Lucas, on the beach where I had a home, I had this epiphany one day. I just said, well, why don't we have midlife wisdom schools, places where people go in midlife to repurpose themselves and reimagine what's next for them? So we opened that in January of 2018, and we've now had 750 alums from 24 countries go through the program there. In COVID, though, and it's been very successful. We use NPS, Net Promoter Score, as our guest satisfaction, and we have a 95 NPS score, which is like off the charts. What's been fascinating about it, and you can see more about it at modernelderacademy.com. Well, we had to close, with COVID in mid-March, and we were going to reopen in mid-May, and of course that didn't happen. And then we were thinking, okay, maybe in the summer. Nope, that's not going to happen. And so we said, okay, we're reopening in the end of October. And then about a month and a half ago, we said, that's not going to happen. And so we were now faced with the pivot we had to do. And for many of you who are listening or watching right now, you're having to do pivots. And what I would just say is, I'll tell you the pivot we've made and how successful it's been. But sometimes a pivot is successful, and sometimes it's the third or the fourth pivot that's successful. It's not the first one. I know a lot about Airbnb. I'm still actively involved as an advisor. What's been very clear in the last 7 months is Airbnb has surprised people by how successful they've been in the pandemic. Partly because what people are looking for is more space for longer stays that are not too expensive in some place in nature. So they want that. Well, our campus is 4 or 5 acres on the beach in nature, and very open air because it's southern Baja Peninsula, so you don't have to be indoors. So we created something called sabbatical sessions, and you can find out about it at sabbaticalsessions.com. And we basically created minimum 2-week stays, a light level of programming, all the COVID protocols you want, hiking, biking, surfing, etc. And we made the pivot, and there was such a thirst for this that we actually filled up. We've basically filled almost all from October to the end of January. We have a lot of space right now in December, so if anybody wanted to come down, that's the time to come, or over Thanksgiving. But it's a 2-week minimum stay, and it's been fascinating. So I think one of the things that we have to recognize is being adaptable and nimble is really essential. And this is a hard one for the hotel business. I still own 9 hotels. I own the real estate of 9 hotels, and they're sucking wind big time. I mean, it's not easy. They're all in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's not been an easy time. So they're not in locations that are doing well. So there's some hotels that have done very well, but the San Francisco Bay Area is not one of those places, especially in the urban parts of it. But it's partly because hospitality real estate, hotel real estate, it's hard to adapt it. How do you adapt it in such a way? Citizen M is trying to do this right now with their relationship with Facebook. And there's some players out there who are doing it. But it's hard because hard assets in bricks and mortar are not adaptable. Part of the reason that Airbnb has done well is because it's very adaptable. It's a marketplace. And so the marketplace sort of defines what's going to happen there. The reason we could adapt at the Modern Elder Academy is because we are in a location where people would like to be. Now, albeit most people who come there have to do an international flight to get there. That's not easy. So that and our primary customer base, our average age of people who come to MEA is 54. So they're like a little older, which is also not so good because these are the people who are most vulnerable to COVID. Yeah. So long story short is, I would just say, trying to understand the underlying needs of the customer And I write about this in my book, Peak, how great companies get their mojo from Maslow. If you can understand the unrecognized need of the customer, you can deliver something that no one else is delivering. So
yeah. And I read that patterns are a big thing, recognizing patterns. And what does that mean when you're trying to recognize patterns? For me, when I go into a brand new franchise or a restaurant, I look at the receipt, I look at everything, their marketing, everything, and figure out how can I implement this because it's a great experience to my hotel or other businesses that I'm doing, right? And so is that what you're talking about when you're talking about pattern recognition? Because, I'm thinking like, people are thinking, oh, just like designs or something. But like, what does it mean to actually recognize a pattern and then take it and make it your own?
Okay, so let me use an example. So pattern recognition is almost like a proxy or an alternative way of describing wisdom. So with time, you start to notice patterns. You notice patterns and it builds your intuition. Your intuition gets built. And then when you actually see something, your gut instinct tells you yes, no, whatever. So let me use an example. In 1999, Joie de Vivre opened a place called Costa Noa. It was glamping before the word glamping existed. So glamping as a word, it was created in 2005. So this was 6 years before the word glamping existed. And 13 years before Glamping Hub, which is like the Airbnb of glamping, was created. So we were way ahead of the game. And it launched really well. And then the .com bust and 9/11 came along. And we had to close up shop and we had to sell it for cents on the dollar. So I've not just had successes, I've had failures too. But so it was a boutique campground in essence. What I learned from that experience was the following. We thought the number one thing people were going to want, especially the corporate groups that were doing things on weekdays, was horseback riding, mountain biking, hiking, playing football on the beach, etc. The number one thing they really wanted was yoga. Now, again, that may sound like it makes sense today, but 21 years ago, it wasn't clear that the corporate market was very yoga focused.
Yeah.
And so pattern recognition in my brain, well, that we had to sell for 25 cents on the dollar, I think. So 25% of what we built the place for. So it was a big loss. But just 6 years later, we opened a place called the Hotel Vitale in San Francisco on the waterfront. And it was the first real upscale hotel opening on San Francisco's waterfront ever. And one of the decisions I made that my investors just looked at me like, you're nuts, Chip, is I said, I want to have a 400 square foot yoga studio on the top floor, the penthouse floor, with outdoor terraces, so that we can offer a yoga class every morning to all of our guests for free. They looked at me like, what are you talking about? This is not a spa. Yeah. This is a business hotel in financial district, San Francisco. And I said, trust me, this is a hotel that's actually trying to appeal to women business travelers. They want yoga because yoga is the thing that actually helps calm them down and recenter them while they're being a road warrior out on the road 4 days a week. Mm-hmm. And it turns out we were right. There was a line out the door the moment we opened, and the Hotel Vitale got a ton of press, and it became, frankly, San Francisco's most successful upscale hotel. Not just because of yoga, but the yoga helped position and package how people saw the brand of that boutique hotel. So long story short is the pattern recognition of a failure, noticing something, being a first-class noticer, allowed me to use that failure to actually leverage it into a success at a future project.
Yeah, and a lot of people right now are kind of doing that pattern recognition. And guys, comment, let us know. By the way, we're still giving away Amazon gift card before the end of the show. And I'm watching the comments, and please comment and let us know. And if you have a question for Chip, please ask that question right now. And if you're loving the show, hit the like button and comment. And the most engaging person will win a $50 gift card. Now, we're talking about that pattern recognition. People are going through a process of like, I still have a job, but I don't know what my future is going to be at this job because I might get laid off like they did yesterday to 28,000 people at Disney.
Yeah.
And so other people, and I always recommend everybody have a side hustle, something that you're passionate about, that just keeps you going as you're working on your job, but you have this nighttime thing, this afternoon, this weekend thing that you work on. I have multiple side hustles that I work on right now, and people are doing that. But how do they stay focused, and how do they kind of keep their emotions out when you're thinking about other things? As far as like you recognize a pattern, you're gonna go do it. Do I go all in or all of those things? It's kind of
Well,
confusing.
Well, one thing Richard Branson said to me when he was a little bit of a mentor from afar, and then he wrote the foreword of my book. He said this in the foreword of my first book, The Rebel Rules. He said, when I'm creating something new, a new business, he says, my mantra is, I am the market. I am the market. I am the market. I am the market. What he meant by that is, if you fall in love with something that you want to produce as a product or service, and it's satisfying your needs better than anything else out there in the market, that is a good indicator you're on the right path. Now, some people would disagree with me on this, and they would say, or actually disagree with Richard and me. They would say, no, you actually need to do, you're a sample size of one.
Yeah.
Go out and do a focus group. Go out and do qualitative and quantitative research, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, if you're a big company, you can do that. And frankly, still fail in delivering a product. But if you're an entrepreneur, look at the thing that makes you have a big smile on your face as a customer. Because if you actually are going to produce a product or service that delights you, there's likely a lot of people like you. And it allows you to have an exceptionally high standard. And then go out and beta test it. Try it in small ways. Don't feel like you have to. I've seen so many people come to me with a business plan and say, here it is. And it's like, oh, you want to compete with Disney. You want to create a theme park on 400 acres. And you're 27 years old and you don't have any money. Well, this isn't going to work. Why don't we start with you creating a really cool theme park on a corner in the suburbs that has 4 different elements to it. And actually, instead of you running all of those, you find 4 tenants. You and 3 other tenants that take the space, and you create this sort of immersive space where each of these tenants and what they're offering sort of feed off each other. Start with that, because quite frankly, Stuart Brand, who was basically Steve Jobs' patron saint of business, said, start cheap, small, and local, because your mistakes will be small. And that's true. And I was lucky that at 26, I started with a 44-room motel, still own the place called the Phoenix. It's a rock and roll hotel. And so I learned the hard way. I was cleaning rooms. I was doing the full thing. I was doing the night audit. I learned the hard way. And this is a Stanford Business School grad, MBA. I had a salary of $24,000 a year. And so long story short is, that allowed me to learn from my mistakes before I tried to get too big. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't, as a young person, go big. I mean, Brian Chesky and his 2 co-founders went really big at a young age. But what they also knew is that they needed to bring in occasionally, hopefully, a little bit of wisdom to help support them in their process.
Yeah, I agree. And then you have this blog, Wisdom Well. Can you share a little bit about that and kind of where you do a lot of writing, but you also have some contributors that come in and kind of help with the process and share some great insights. Where did that come from? Where did that idea come from when you just want to share wisdom? Because you have a lot, you've had so many experiences, you're connected with so many different types of people. Can you tell me a little bit more about Wisdom?
Yes, sure. So Wisdom Well is a daily blog. You can find it on the Modern Elder Academy website. You probably can just Google it and you'll find it as well. So what it is it gives me an opportunity on a daily basis to put something out in the world. Today's actually is just a summary of 8 posts from the month of September. Tomorrow's is a guest post of somebody who actually is based in Singapore. So I'm the primary writer of it, and it's not specific to hospitality. It is focused very much on wisdom, on emotional intelligence, on leadership, and to some degree on personal development. And so what I would just say is, and it's free. If you actually subscribe to it, it's a free subscription. You get a daily email from me each morning, depending upon where you're based in the world. But it goes out at 5:15 every morning, West Coast time in the U.S. And the reason I do it is because I love sharing my insights. The best teachers are great learners. And so I'm just a curious soul like you are, Rupesh. One of my role models, never met him, was Peter Drucker, who was probably the most famous management theorist. I have a book review of a book about him this Friday, so 2 days from now, on the Wisdom Well site. So Peter Drucker wrote 40 books, 2/3 of them after the age of 65. Every 2 years, he would pick a subject that had nothing to do with being a business school professor that actually was interesting to him. And then he would become one of the world's leading experts on this. I did this myself when it comes to festivals. I spent about a bunch of time going around the world. I went to 36 festivals in 16 countries in 1 year because I wanted to just understand why the more digital we get, the more ritual we need. I was also on the founding board member of Burning Man. And so I had a fascination with festivals. I've had a fascination with emotions. And I studied that and then wrote a book that became a New York Times bestseller. I have been fascinated by hot springs. And so I'll spend 2 years just like diving in and becoming one of the world's leading experts on hot springs. So that process of being curious and that process of imagining what you can learn that you haven't learned yet is part of the reason that we have an elixir for life, when we actually are curious. So I would just say, stay curious. It's one of the easiest ways to stay young. That's it. What did you put on the screen there?
I put on the screen, it says, this is a quote from you and from one of your speeches. Yes. It says, when you create space in your life, interesting things can emerge. What does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Well, let's use the example of no one could believe that Chip Conley was selling Joie de Vivre, the company he had been running for 24 years, when I sold it in June of 2010. I was ready. I knew 2 years earlier I was ready. It took 2 years to get to the point of it actually happening. So just know that people want to sometimes keep you in your identity static. They don't want you to say, oh, I'm going to do something new. But I needed space. I didn't know what was going to emerge from that. What emerged from that was this book about emotions, and then my festival website that I ended up creating as a result of my fascination with festivals. But the big thing that emerged was Airbnb. I would never have been able to join Brian, helping him steer the rocket ship for the last 8 years, if I was still CEO of Joie de Vivre. He would never have come looking for me. What he knew was like, oh, Chip did this. Here's what he did. And I've read his book. All three founders of Airbnb had read my book, Peak, and they said, we want to be a peak company. We really like that book. So I said, yeah, let's talk. But if I had still been CEO of Joie de Vivre, there's no way I could have done that. So sometimes if something just in your life right now feels like it's just stuck and you're not passionate about it anymore, and it feels like it's almost strangling you, then you need to look at what's the path to get out of it. Let me say, I sold Joie de Vivre, the management company and brand, for probably 1/4 of what it was really worth, like 4 years later. So you could say, Chip, that was dumb. But I held on to the real estate, and guess what? At that point, I owned 20 hotels, and I've sold 11 of them now. But the real estate made me a lot more money than I did, I earned from just selling the management company and a brand. Yeah. But more importantly, by joining Airbnb 8 years ago, I earned a ton of Airbnb stock. And that's worth more than both the hotel real estate as well as the management company. Yeah. So that point is, if you allow yourself to have some space and you stay focused and driven. So, some people would actually create the space and then just go hang out on the beach drinking, pina coladas all day. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, all right. So a lot of people are asking in the comments. So one last question I have before we let you go. This has been amazing, guys. If you've liked this conversation, I've written down a bunch of different things. Hit the like button and comment and let us know that you really enjoyed this. One question, and we're all in the hospitality business, taking care of guests, making them feel special, and then welcoming them back. What do you recommend right now for a graduate that's graduating, a hospitality with a hospitality degree this year or next year? What do you say to them when the future of hospitality doesn't look, or it's kind of, it's up in the air right now?
Well, I would say the following. Travel and hospitality is going through a rough period, but it'll come back. And new forms of travel are sprouting right now. So I am a huge fan of co-living, which is part of the reason I mentor Reza, the CEO of The Collective. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. I think there's a huge opportunity around digital nomads. if remote work is sort of the new thing, and it's maybe going to be lasting a long time, not just 5 years, but maybe a lot of people are going to say, I prefer remote work from here forward. And a certain fraction of those will actually be digital nomads. Listen, digital nomads are travelers. How do we create products that satisfy them? The hotel industry doesn't really have products that satisfy digital nomads. Airbnb does, but what if there's a brand of creating sort of extended stay hotels that are sort of immersive co-living, co-working spaces for digital nomads? That would be a great opportunity. So what I would say to a grad from this year or next is find a mentor or a company that you really admire, a culture, and just know that for your first 5 years after graduating, you're just in the immersion process of learning, and just learn everything you can. Don't focus on how much money you make, although you may have loans you have to pay back. Make sure you're paying your bills, but don't get overly fixated on compensation right now. Focus on experience, and most importantly, focus on a place where there's going to be someone who's going to take you under their wing and actually help teach you the business. And you may be able to teach them a few things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like technology. My kids teach me technology, and other people teach me technology all day long. They're like, "You know how to use this?" I'm like, "No, I don't, but please teach me." And for us, as we get older, we do have to keep that open mind that I am willing to learn every single day. And I think that's what keeps that older generation, or my generation older, that if we're not open to new ideas, and we're not open to kind of just keeping our minds open and free and letting things into our minds, then we're gonna kind of get left behind. Do you agree?
Yes. Yes. I can't say it any better.
Yeah. Well, Chip, this has been amazing. I know there's a bunch of comments in here, that questions that people want to ask, and hopefully we can get to those after the show. But Chip, where can people find you, and how can they connect with you? I know, real quick, it's Modern Elder Academy, where people can sign up, and you're already sold out for quite some time now, right?
Yeah. So if you go to modernelderacademy.com, it'll pass you on to sabbatical sessions, which is the other website .com. But you can see the link at modernelderacademy.com. You can actually reach out to me on LinkedIn. So that's my primary social media that I use. And Wisdom Well is posted there. But I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, sort of. But I would just say number one thing is just subscribe for free to Wisdom Well, because that way you will stay in touch, including special offers we make there for things that you get to, like we have something called MEA Online that just went live for a beta program, and it sold out in 17 minutes for all the spaces. So we let our Wisdom Well readers know about these things.
Awesome. Well, this has been a pleasure, Chip. Thank you so much.
Yep.
I continue learning from you every day. I watch that video of you going up the elevator to your house, and I enjoy that mindset of just keeping it going, right?
Thank you. I appreciate it, Rupesh, and I love your energy.
Thanks, Chip. Great speaking to you. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye. See you. All right, guys, what did you think about this episode? I mean, I loved everything that Chip talked about. And, as we get older, we sometimes feel like we're not good enough for what we're doing. And I feel like it's confusing sometimes. I feel like that all the time, where like see younger people coming in and like, oh my God, they're so much better than me. And they have so much more information as far as technology, or there's one thing. But, I think when we judge ourselves, it kills our vibe. And I think that we have a lot more or you have a lot more, I have a lot more than you actually think we do, right? That we can share and be a mentor, like Chip was saying, be a mentor to somebody. And then, maybe you get a mentor. It doesn't matter what age you are, to get a mentor and have somebody just follow it. One of my mentors, I didn't tell him until recently, was Shep Hyken. You can go to sheptv.com, SHEP.TV.com, and he posts videos of customer service. And I learned a lot of these concepts, and even speaking in public from him, and just being on the sidelines, listening to and subscribing to his podcast, subscribing to his newsletter. I learned all these different things, and that's what I recommend when we're talking about how to continue growing, especially as we get older, especially as we're trying to stay inspired, but there's all these things that are confusing us. Keep it going by just following a few people that keep you going, right? And keep you motivated. And guys, thank you so much. If you loved this episode, please comment, let us know, and I'm gonna be picking the winner right now, and I appreciate everybody's comments here. All right, so the winner for this week, and you're gonna win a $50 Amazon gift card. And guys, what else can I give away? Like, I have a lot of companies that are saying, hey, I wanna help you give away this thing. I wanna give away that thing, but I wanna make sure that this information that we provide and some of the giveaways and some of the things that we provide for you is relevant and like, informative, valuable, all of those things. So guys, comment, let us know what else, instead of a $50 Amazon gift card, like what else can we give away that keeps people motivated and keeps them going? And guys, thank you so much. Everyone's saying great episode, great show. Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate it. There's people from like all over the world really watching and listening. And, I love this conversation. All right, so the winner for this week's episode of the $50 gift card is Michelle Seaman. Michelle, congratulations. Everybody, please congratulate her. Here she is. She's been commenting the entire time, so I really appreciate it. And guys, please congratulate Michelle. And let's see. I will see you guys next week. Stay safe. Take care of each other. Be well. And guys, this episode, please somebody comment in the comments right now. This episode is brought to you by spurwork.com/hospitality live. It's the #1 all-in-one payroll HR benefits platform that you eliminate paper. You eliminate everything, even scheduling, everything's online. So no more your night auditor calling you saying, what day do I work? Or the AM or PM shift saying, what day do I work? What days am I off? What days am I on? All of this is through an app, which is super easy, super convenient, and it's frustration free, which is like the best part about when you're dealing with anything with HR, right? You already are dealing with a lot running your hotels. Hit up spurwork.com over here /hospitality live. Let them know I sent you, and they'll take care of you. All right, guys? I'll see you next week. Oh, and by the way, guys, if you want to rewatch this or share this, go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com /Rupesh live, and you'll be able to watch all the past episodes. This is episode number 58. So you can go back and watch all the past episodes. They're full of information. They're evergreen, which is you can learn this information this year, next year, and 10 years. This is always relevant. All the information I share is relevant. Hit up that website, youtube.com /Rupesh live, and I will see you next Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. See ya.